11 Alive News.
Talks to Sean Diddy Combs attorney Mark Agnifilo about when he told the media mogul to expect charges, and his plans for defense against the charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking.
So, thank you, Caitlin. So I think we have a good shot tomorrow. Tomorrow we argue in front of the district court judge whose case this is. Today we argued in front of a magistrate judge whose case this is not. We'll never have this magistrate as our judge again. But tomorrow we argue in front of Judge Carter, and it's Judge Carter's case.
My bigger concern deals with the danger of obstruction of justice and the danger of witness tampering, Judge Andrew Carter said. That is a real concern that I have here. According to CNN, Sean Diddy Combs to remain in custody after judge denies bail appeal in racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking case.
So hope springs eternal, but I think we have strong arguments, and I think we have a good chance.
Well, and what prosecutors were arguing is not only does your client pose a flight risk, because obviously he's incredibly wealthy, has access to planes and a lot of staff, even though you said he turned over his passport to you months ago, they were also worried about him being able to interfere with witnesses and calling them. And so I guess the question is, how do you assure the court that that won't happen if prosecutors are saying, this is someone who's attempted to bribe security staff and has already threatened and interfered with witnesses?
So I think the most important thing, even more important than the passport, is that Mr. Combs came to New York on September 5th. As soon as we realized that this indictment was going to be coming down in a matter of weeks, maybe months, but sometime soon, Mr. Combs got on a plane, left his home in Florida, flew to New York. I called the prosecutors myself. I said, Mr. Combs is in New York. Do you want to know where he is? If you want to know where he is, I'll tell you where he is, but he wants to surrender. He's here to surrender. They didn't want him to surrender, because if he surrenders, they don't get to tell the judge that he's a flight risk and he's a danger. Because who, as a danger and a flight risk, would fly to New York and surrender? So they didn't want him to surrender.
So since September 5th, you had known, you expected it was likely he was going to formally face charges.
So I really knew he was formally going to face charges on March 25th, the day of the searches. When Homeland Security searched his Los Angeles home, his Miami home, and his airplane, I knew that day by looking at the search warrants. I mean, I've been doing this for a while. This is not my first or 100th rodeo, that this was going to come as a matter of time. What I realized in early September is that it was coming soon. And so it was time for Mr. Combs to come to New York, which he did. And let me just point out one very important thing. That the prosecutors are seizing on something that happened 8 years ago. You know, this video that we've all seen, and it's a bad video for Mr. Combs, and he said so himself when he gave his apology. This is 8 years ago, and the prosecutors are talking about him bribing a hotel security worker. There was no criminal investigation. This was just a matter of personal embarrassment, because he and the person in the video were in the midst of a 10-year relationship that was difficult at times, that was toxic at times, but it was mutually so. And this whole notion that Mr. Combs is forcing drugs on someone is just nonsensical, and it's going to prove to not be true.
A federal judge on Wednesday ordered Sean Combs to remain in jail until his trial for sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, rejecting an appeal by the music mogul's lawyers requesting that he be released on bail. Judge Andrew L. Carter Jr. said at a hearing in Lower Manhattan that Mr. Combs posed a risk of witness tampering and was a danger to the safety of the community. He rejected an unusual proposal from Mr. Combs' legal team in which he would have remained at his mansion in Florida, monitored around the clock by a private security force. The lawyers had offered a $50 million bond for his release.
Well, on that video, he initially denied the allegations when his then girlfriend, who was in that video, filed a lawsuit last fall. And we have that video. I should note CNN was the first outlet to exclusively report on it. He denied that happened when she filed a complaint. And then when the video came out is when he apologized for it.
So I wasn't his lawyer back then, so I don't think he denied. I mean, I think the lawyers were the ones mostly making the denials. I think they were denying sex crimes. I mean, because at the end of the day, the gravamen of that civil complaint wasn't a misdemeanor assault, which is what you see on that video. Not minimizing it, but it's a misdemeanor assault. What the gravamen of the complaint was sex crimes, and he denied that, and he still does.
Arguing that Mr. Combs was prone to violence, prosecutors spoke at length about a leaked surveillance video from 2016 in which he was seen physically assaulting Cassandra Ventura, his former girlfriend, who is known as Cassie. She filed a sexual assault lawsuit against him last year that was quickly settled. The judge said, "That video is quite disturbing," after which Mr. Combs, seated between his lawyers, nodded several times. His influence makes it so difficult for witnesses to share their experiences and trust that the government can keep them safe from him, said Emily A. Johnson, one of the prosecutors. After hearing the defense's proposal of security monitoring, effectively a private version of house arrest, the judge said that even under those terms Mr. Combs could still use employees to contact witnesses, perhaps even through coded messages. Combs, the mogul, wore a black t-shirt and sweatpants and listened closely, sometimes nodding to his lawyers to indicate his agreement with strict restrictions if released. Mr. Agnifilo tried to convince the judge of his client's good character, saying he was a religious man who watched a sermon each day and was an altar boy as a child, a detail that caused the judge to scoff.
Well, and you're saying that this is all just about that one relationship, but when you read through the indictment, they say that there's not just one victim. They say there's multiple victims here today. And what I heard described was they said they have 50 witnesses or victims.
Yeah, I think it's 49 witnesses and one victim. I think if you broke it down, and I say that because count 2, which is the sex trafficking count, has victim number 1, and there is no victim number 2 anywhere in the indictment.
So you're saying that there are not other women, because what they were essentially arguing here is that he coerced and forced women into sex acts by using physical force, financial pressure, emotional abuse, and narcotics for what they described as these freak-off sessions. They say that he self-described them as that.
Yeah, there's one victim in the indictment. That's the charging
But
document.
one victim does count, right?
No, of course, but I'm just not. It's not 50. I mean, what they did is a little too cute. Is 50 witnesses or victims? Well, it's one victim. That's all that's in the indictment.
Our reporter who was in the courtroom today said that he appeared to have a stunned expression on his face. Was he surprised that he was arrested?
No, he definitely was not. I mean, I told him myself in early September, you are going to be arrested soon, and you're going to be charged with racketeering, and you're going to be charged with sex trafficking. So come to New York. It wasn't a long conversation. He agreed. So we knew this was coming. And in fact, we offered that he would turn himself in.
So if there are these witnesses and victims, and as you're saying that you believe it's one victim and 49 witnesses who saw this behavior, that's pretty powerful, though, to have that many people who have, if they go to court and argue that they witnessed this behavior by your client.
Well,
what's your defense against that kind of case?
So my defense is very well established. I interviewed myself the different men who were being brought sort of into Mr. Combs and this person's intimate situation. I've flown around the country. I've interviewed a large number of them. There's not the slightest inkling, according to the interviews that I've done, of anything that's coercive, non-consensual. Nobody was too drunk. Nobody was too high. These were adults in a relation. This is a 10-year relationship. We can't forget that. This is a 10-year relationship, and it was adults and consensual, and everybody who was there wanted to be there. So I feel very confident in our position.
You said
Combs, dressed in the same black shirt and gray striped sweatpants he wore during his first bail hearing on Tuesday, dipped his head, looking down at the defense table when he heard the judge's decision. In a 14-page indictment unsealed in the Southern District of New York Tuesday, Combs was charged with 1 count each of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Calling Combs a serial abuser, Assistant United States Attorney Emily A. Johnson said in court Tuesday that the rapper had demonstrated a pattern of abuse, and for years been undeterred by law enforcement. He is an extreme danger to the community, she added. Diddy's attorney says he came to NY to cooperate with authorities. Feds believe they found drugs during arrest. Sean Combs had been in New York for 11 days before federal authorities arrested him on sex crime and racketeering charges at a Manhattan hotel at 8:25 p.m. Monday, Sept. 16. Inside his hotel room, law enforcement allegedly found bags of pink powder, which prosecutors said at Combs' Tuesday, September 17th, arraignment, appears to be narcotics. Authorities are having the powder tested, Assistant United States Attorney Emily A. Johnson told a federal judge during the music mogul's arraignment. Johnson alleged that previous seizures from Combs suggest that the powder could be ecstasy. In a 14-page indictment unsealed Tuesday, prosecutors claimed that for years the singer known as Diddy coerced women to participate in freak-offs, defined as drug-induced, elaborate and produced sex performances, with male sex workers. Prosecutors say he threatened the women's entertainment careers if they refused him and used secret recordings of the performances as collateral. In addition to orchestrating and directing the freak-offs, Combs would record the gatherings and masturbate while watching the events unfold, prosecutors allege. Dressed in long-sleeved black shirt and gray-striped sweatpants, Diddy stood up and said, "Not guilty," when asked to enter a plea at the arraignment. When leaving court, he turned and touched his hand to his heart to his family, including his son Christian, who was seated in the third row. Members of Combs' family declined comment to People. They left the courthouse without making a statement. At the arraignment, prosecutors alleged that Combs had what appeared to be drugs in the hotel room in which he was arrested on Monday, September 16. Mark Agnifilo is handling the defense of Combs. He started his own litigation earlier this year. Combs, by tapping Mark Agnifilo to defend him against sex trafficking and racketeering charges, has turned to a veteran former prosecutor familiar with complex criminal enterprises. According to the indictment against Combs, Combs would lure victims into the freak-offs under the pretense of a romantic relationship before allegedly coercing them to participate. Prosecutors claim that because the alleged freak-offs were physically taxing and could last several days, Combs and the alleged victims needed IV treatment afterward. Agnifilo's clients have included Martin Shkreli, the so-called pharma bro, and sex cult leader Keith Raniere. He's also represented Russian banks, a Turkish-Iranian gold trader, a Syrian-Lebanese gun runner, and a slew of lawyers that have faced scrutiny over ties to their own clients. He's quite knowledgeable in the law, but also a great diplomat, and as a former prosecutor he definitely knows how the system works, said Eugene Gorvik, a past client of Agnifilo's in a fraud case. He knows the levers to pull. Authorities arrested Combs in a New York hotel on September 16 and in addition to sex trafficking alleged that he engaged in forced labor, interstate transportation for prostitution, drug offenses, and kidnapping. The hip-hop mogul's lawyers on Wednesday asked that he await trial in home detention rather than jail. 6 months ago Agnifilo hung his own shingle with litigators who, like himself, had worked with prominent New York criminal defense lawyer Benjamin Brafman. Agnifilo had been with Brafman's litigation boutique since 2006. Diddy's defense attorneys have proposed a bail package that, as part of the package, his travel would be restricted to New York and South Florida. But prosecutors have asked the judge overseeing Combs' case to deny him bail and keep him jailed. Prosecutors wrote in a motion to United States magistrate that the defendant is dangerous and poses an ongoing threat to the safety of the community. If released, he remains a serious risk of flight, despite the conditions offered by his counsel. Most glaringly, the defendant also poses a significant risk of obstructing justice. Prosecutors alleged in the motion that Combs has attempted to bribe security staff and threatened and interfered with witnesses to his criminal conduct. He has already tried to obstruct the government's investigation of this case, repeatedly contacting victims and witnesses and feeding them false narratives of events. Shortly after arriving in Manhattan's federal court Tuesday morning, Sean Diddy Combs' oldest son, Christian King Combs, made his way with a group of 7 men to the 5th floor arraignment room, where they each requested a copy of the indictment. Seated in an orange chair in the arraignment room and surrounded by the other men, the younger Combs was seen reading the 14-page indictment outlining the allegations. Each of the men silently leafed through their own paper copy of the indictment. Mark Agnifilo has rescued a lot worse. He often had a hand, or quietly shouldered the load, on key matters for Brafman's firm, such as the defense of Shkreli, who served almost 7 years in prison for fraud. Shkreli said September 16 on the social media platform X that Combs will be acquitted. Shkreli didn't respond to a comment request. Agnifilo was the head of the Violent and Organized Crime Unit at the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey, where he spent a decade specializing in mafia and gang-related cases. His career began in 1990 at the New York County District Attorney's Office, where he met his wife, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, who introduced him to Brafman and works at her husband's firm. Agnifilo, while still at Brafman's shop, last year represented Roger Ng, a former employee of Goldman Sachs Group Inc. who received a 10-year prison sentence for his role in Malaysia's 1MDB fraud. That term, however, has been repeatedly postponed as Ng assists law enforcement officials abroad. Gorvic is familiar with Agnifilo ability to take on complicated cases with an added layer of international intrigue. Gorvic said he knew about statistics showing that the Justice Department overwhelmingly prevails in cases that go to trial. He said Agnifilo was willing to fight his case in court but was also honest about the long odds for exoneration. He will make the best possible recommendation for his client, whoever the client is, Gorvic said of Agnifilo. Braffman confirmed in an email that he's no longer counsel to Combs, who he and Agnifilo most recently represented in a lawsuit filed last year by Cassie, Ventura. Defending Diddy, who could face more than 15 years in prison, will be a tough task. Federal prosecutors disclosed during a Tuesday press conference that 3 AR-15 rifles with defaced serial numbers, narcotics, videos of sexual encounters called freak-offs, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant were seized from his homes. A magistrate judge denied Combs bail later that day.
I really knew he was formally going to face charges on March 25th, the day of the searches. When Homeland Security searched his Los Angeles home, his Miami home, and his airplane, I knew that day by looking at the search warrants. I mean, I've been doing this for a while. This is not my first or 100th rodeo, that this was going to come as a matter of time. What I realized in early September is that it was coming soon. And so it was time for Mr. Combs to come to New York, which he did.
As you leave the page, don't forget to hit the like bell and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.